Welcome, dear friends. Today's podcast draws its inspiration from the spiritual classic Divine Intimacy, Meditations on the Interior Life for Every Day of the Liturgical Year by Father Gabriel of St. Mary Magdalene, OCD. For more Carmelite resources, visit the General Curia of the Teresian Carmel at discalcedcarmelite.com. Now let us begin our journey into Father Gabriel's profound spiritual insights.
Welcome back. We're continuing our exploration of divine intimacy by Father Gabriel of St. Mary Magdalene, moving further along on our path to a closer connection with God. This time we'll be looking at Meditation 18, which is all about seeking God in faith.
This meditation is really interesting. It gives us this specifically Carmelite perspective on keeping faith, even when you aren't really, feeling those spiritual consolations, those tangible ones. It reminds us that our connection with God isn't about those temporary, fleeting feelings. It's about something much deeper, like unwavering trust.
Yeah, I see that. Like Father Gabriel starts this meditation with a quote from Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. This definition really sets the stage for this whole idea of faith as our pathway to God. How do you see St. Paul's definition fitting into seeking God?
His words, St. Paul's, they really resonate with the Carmelite tradition. I think it's because they emphasize that our journey toward God is often kind of hidden, like veiled in mystery. And because of that, we really need to lean on faith to show us the way. The Carmelites actually call this naked faith, which I think is a really interesting way to put it. It's seeking God without relying on those feelings, those consolations. Because let's face it, feelings can be so, fleeting, unreliable.
Yeah, naked faith is a really interesting term. Could you maybe explain that a little more for our listeners? It might seem a bit counterintuitive, especially because a lot of times we're looking for tangible experiences in our spiritual lives.
Absolutely it can be. But, St. John of the Cross, who's, incredibly important in Carmelite spirituality, he encourages us to find God in faith and love and to detach from this need for, feeling satisfied spiritually. In the Spiritual Canticle, stanza 11, he writes, "We need to seek God in faith and in love without desiring to find satisfaction in anything." And that's a tough one, because it's really calling us to let go of control, to embrace that mystery of God's presence.
It's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
It's really human to want to, experience things, especially when it comes to our spiritual lives.
Yeah.
We want the signs, the confirmations, those feelings of being close to God.
For sure. But St. John of the Cross has this beautiful analogy to illustrate how faith can lead us to God even when we don't know the way. In stanza 11 of the Spiritual Canticle, he talks about the guides of the blind. These guides, even though they themselves can't see, they know the way perfectly, intimately, and they represent faith and love leading us through this darkness toward God, even when the path isn't clear to us.
I see. So even if we feel uncertain, trusting those guides seems incredibly important. It means really surrendering, to the wisdom of those who've walked this path before, the people who've gone through the darkness and come out into God's light.
It really does. And, in the Ascent of Mount Carmel, St. John of the Cross talks more about faith. He says that faith goes beyond our knowledge or reasoning, that it's the proximate and proportionate means whereby the soul is united with God. What he's saying is that faith is like this direct link to the divine, like it bridges that gap between our limited human understanding and the infinite mystery of God.
And I love that in that same passage, he compares faith to seeing God. It emphasizes how faith helps us get past our earthly limitations. Like it allows us to actually glimpse God's reality, even if we aren't seeing it physically. How strongly we believe affect this connection with the divine?
The more deeply we believe, the stronger that union with God becomes. So it doesn't matter how we're feeling emotionally or whether or not we're experiencing spiritual consolations. It's in those moments of, what we've been calling naked faith. Those moments when we hold on to God even though we don't feel him, that's when our faith really grows stronger and our connection with him it deepens.
That makes me think about how maybe sometimes God holds back those consolations on purpose. Maybe he does that to make our faith stronger. Like in our everyday lives, we go through challenges and those challenges refine us. It's like how a weightlifter needs to push past what's comfortable to build their muscles. In the same way, maybe we have to lean on faith even when we can't tangibly feel God there.
That's such a good point. It lines up with what St. John says in his first letter, chapter 4, verse 16. "And we have come to know and believe the love that God has for us. The core of faith is believing in that love, God's love, even when we don't feel it in a physical way.
Right, it's like we're being called to trust in God's love, even when things are dark and uncertain. It reminds me of Moses in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 27, who kept going, as seeing him who is invisible. He didn't need to see God or have these, clear signs. He chose to trust in God's presence and his guidance.
Moses' story is such a powerful example of what it means to walk by faith, even when everything seems so dark. He didn't let his, lack of physical sight stop him from believing in God's promises. And that unwavering faith is what gave him the strength to lead his people through the wilderness, and eventually reach the promised land.
Yeah, his story really makes all of us think about what it means to walk by faith in our own lives. It's a journey, for sure, and it takes constant surrendering, constant trust, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. We all go through times when doubts creep in, when we question if God is really there, and we long for some kind of proof. What can we do in those moments when we feel that doubt?
In those moments, that prayer from Mark chapter 9, verse 24 becomes so important. I do believe, Lord, help my unbelief. It's this very humble prayer, where we're acknowledging our very human struggle to keep believing when things are hard.
It's such a powerful prayer, and it really does resonate. It speaks to that experience we all have where faith and doubt are kind of battling inside us, and we're trying to, understand how our limited understanding fits in with God's infinite mystery. And so that honesty in this prayer that I think makes it such a great tool for strengthening our faith.
Absolutely. And St. Teresa of Avila, who is a doctor of the church, she really embodies this unwavering faith in the face of mystery. Even though she went through times of darkness and doubt, her belief in God's love and presence never wavered. Her writings, which are full of her struggles and her triumphs, are like a guide for navigating those tricky parts of faith.
Her example is truly inspiring. It shows us that even the greatest saints had to wrestle with doubt. It shows us just how powerful faith can be, even when it's tested and refined by the challenges we go through.
In her autobiography, The Book of Her Life, chapter 20, she talks about how she never doubted God's wondrous works.
What does she say about these wondrous works?
She writes, "O God, far from being astonished by your works, they are for me but one more reason for praising you."
This really gets to the heart of naked faith, doesn't it? Like accepting the mystery of what God does without demanding explanations or proof that we can touch and see. It's about surrendering to the fact that God's love is beyond our understanding. It's about trusting that even when we don't get it, God's plans are ultimately for our good.
She goes on to say, "The more difficult they are to understand, the more they arouse devotion in me. So the less of a natural foundation these truths of the faith have, the more firmly I hold them, and the greater is the devotion they inspire in me. Since you are almighty, I accept all the wondrous works which you have done as most certain, and in this respect I have never harbored a doubt."
Wow, that's a really strong statement of faith. She acknowledges that the very things that make us question our understanding are often the things that deepen our devotion. The mysteries of faith, instead of pushing us away, they pull us closer to God. They make us feel awe and wonder.
Her words are like a reminder that we shouldn't just rely on our logic or physical experiences in our spiritual lives. They invite us to accept the strange beauty of faith, the beauty that comes from surrender and trust, leading us to a deeper connection with God.
St. Teresa really is encouraging us to grow a deeper, a stronger faith in our own lives. A faith that can get us through those times of doubt and come out stronger on the other side. A faith that doesn't need proof, but instead just rests in the certainty of God's love, always there.
When we seek God with this naked faith, it frees us from being controlled by our emotions. We don't have to be totally dependent on those ups and downs of spiritual consolations. We can actually find peace and comfort in that constant truth that God is present, that he loves us.
That's a really powerful shift in how we see things. So instead of looking for God in, external signs or those feelings that come and go, we can turn inward. We ground ourselves in that foundation of faith.
Exactly. It's like the Carmelite tradition really emphasizes this inward journey. It's about letting go of everything superficial. So we can just stand, naked before God, trusting only in his mercy and grace.
It's humbling, isn't it, to realize how limited we are and to just surrender to something so much greater than ourselves.
It is, and it echoes what St. Paul said in his second letter to Timothy, chapter 1, verse 12. "For I know whom I have believed, and I am certain that he is able to keep what I have entrusted to him." It's like he's declaring this unwavering trust in God's faithfulness, even when things are tough, when we face uncertainty.
It sounds like this naked faith, this unwavering belief in God's love, is really the basis of our relationship with him. It's that light that leads us through the darkness and helps us embrace all the mysteries of our faith with open hearts and minds.
It does, and it requires us to be willing to let go of that need to control everything. We have to embrace the unknown and trust that God is working, even if we don't always understand how.
So you're saying it's about stepping outside our comfort zones, moving past what's familiar, and letting our faith be tested by the challenges we go through.
It is. This journey of faith isn't about understanding everything perfectly. It's not about always feeling amazing spiritually. It's about giving ourselves over to the mystery of God's love, trusting that even when we're in darkness, he's guiding us toward that eternal light. Real intimacy with God doesn't depend on our feelings or experiences. It depends on that unshakable belief that he is present, that he loves us, even when we can't see it or feel it.
It makes me think about how, in the ascent of Mount Carmel, St. John of the Cross talks about how powerful faith is. He says, and therefore, the greater the faith of the soul, the more closely it is united with God. But then he goes on to say something interesting. He says that God sometimes he takes away all those spiritual consolations from the soul. And he does it to help that soul practice faith, to help it grow. It seems kind of strange, doesn't it? That God would take away the very things that make us feel close to him.
It does seem like a paradox, but think about it. It's in those times when we feel God's absence the most that our faith is really put to the test. When we're stripped of everything else, standing bare before God, our dependence on him becomes absolute.
So it's got a purification, letting go of anything that gets in the way of our connection with God, allowing faith to be the only thing our souls are holding on to.
That's a good way to put it. In the spiritual canticle, St. John of the Cross uses this image of, the guides of the blind, to show how faith leads us to God even when we're in the unknown. We might not see the path clearly, but faith and love, they're our guides. They lead us steadily toward our final destination.
It's such a beautiful image, showing that trust and surrender that faith requires. We may not understand the path, but we can trust that God, through faith, is leading us to his love.
We have to be willing to be okay with the uncertainty, to be vulnerable and not know what's coming next, and to find that strange joy that comes from finding peace in the middle of darkness.
It really challenges our ideas about how God works, doesn't it? It makes us embrace a deeper understanding of his love and presence.
It does, and the Carmelite tradition, with its focus on naked faith, it gives us a guide for moving through this inner landscape.
Yeah.
It encourages us to get rid of anything that isn't real, to face our limits, and to surrender to God's grace.
It's like we're being called to embrace that mystery of God's love, to trust that even when we can't feel it, he's still there, guiding us, loving us. Without any conditions, it takes courage to walk this path, humility, and an unwavering trust in God's faithfulness.
As we continue thinking about this naked faith and how to seek God through it, let's remember that, we aren't alone on this journey. We have the examples of so many saints who have walked this path before us. Their lives are like these beacons of hope and inspiration.
Their stories remind us that even in the darkest nights, faith can light the way. It can lead us to a deeper understanding of God's love and his presence.
And as we try to live this naked faith in our own lives, let's always turn to that source of all grace and strength, always seeking his guidance and surrendering to his power to change us.
This whole idea of naked faith, it speaks to me. It's not about pretending we don't have doubts or questions, is it? It's more like we acknowledge them, but we choose to hold on to that belief in God, in his love, even when those doubts are there.
Yeah, you got it. The Carmelite way of looking at it, it isn't about some blind faith that ignores our very human struggles. It's about recognizing our doubts, but at the same time, grounding ourselves in that deeper truth that God's love is always there, unwavering.
So it's not like faith and doubt can't exist together. They can, and maybe that tension between them, it can actually make our faith stronger in the long run.
It's kind of think of it like working out a muscle. You build strength by pushing against weight. And in a similar way, when we wrestle with our doubts, when we really face those tough questions, it can lead us to a faith that's, more resilient, more robust.
It's like that prayer from Mark chapter 9, verse 24. I do believe, Lord, help my unbelief. It's raw, it's honest, like we're asking God for his grace to help us keep believing even when we're struggling.
It really is a prayer for all of us who've been through those dark times, those times when we question and wrestle and just desperately seek God's light.
It reminds us that we don't need to have every answer. We don't need to be on this spiritual high all the time. We can still have a deep, meaningful connection with God.
You're right. In fact, sometimes those darker moments, those times when God feels distant, they can actually help us understand his love and presence even better.
St. Teresa of Avila, in her book, The Book of Her Life, chapter 28, she writes about those moments,
Hmm.
her own experiences with doubt and uncertainty. She didn't avoid those challenges. She saw them as chances to grow, to surrender more fully to God's plan.
She really understood that paradox of faith, how God's strength is often most clear when we're at our weakest.
Her belief in God's miracles, those wondrous works, never wavered, even when she didn't understand them. It's a powerful example of naked faith.
It's about trusting that even when we can't see the way, even when the path is unclear, God is guiding us. He's leading us to a deeper understanding of his love, to a deeper union with him.
It's a good reminder that our relationship with God, it isn't built on how we feel at any given moment or how much we think we understand. It's built on faith, on that foundation that gets us through all the ups and downs.
This naked faith, it strips away all the superficial stuff. It brings us face to face with our own limits, with how human we are, and with the vastness of God's love and mercy.
It asks us to let go of control, embrace the mystery, and just trust. Trust that God is always there, even in the dark.
The Carmelite tradition, with its emphasis on contemplation and letting go of attachments, it really offers a lot of wisdom for developing this naked faith. It encourages us to look for God not in the outward things, the feelings that come and go, but in that quiet center of our hearts. That's where he's waiting, ready to change us from the inside out.
As we wrap up our look at seeking God in faith, let's take these thoughts with us into our lives. Let's embrace the challenges, the doubts, even the uncertainties, and see them as opportunities to grow. Because even in the darkness, God's love is there, shining, guiding us toward his light.
And just like those Carmelite saints who walked this path before us, may we find peace and strength in the truth that God is always present, that he loves us. May our naked faith light our way to a deeper, more intimate connection with him.
Thank you so much for listening, praying, and being part of this journey. I'd love to hear from you, what you enjoyed, what you'd like to hear in the future, or just your thoughts. Your feedback means so much. Until next time, may God bless us and keep us close to his heart. Take care and see you soon.